You know, Malcolm Gladwell in his book, The Outliers, said, "Who you are cannot be separated from where you came from." I left India 35 years ago, went on to the United States, and had tremendous success in that meritocracy. But none of that could have happened if I hadn't had a wonderful upbringing very much here in India. So I have a lot to thank India for. Now, my 3 lessons I'd like to share with you. First, please be a lifelong student. You know, when we are kids, we ask questions like, why is the sky blue? Why is the bird flying so high? But for some reason, as we get older, that curiosity goes away. And if we are happy with the knowledge we have, then we are actually going to atrophy. So please remain a lifelong student. Don't lose that curiosity. Second, whatever you do, throw yourself into it. Throw your head, heart, and hands into it. I look at my job not as a job. I look at it as a calling, as a passion. And I don't care about the hours. I don't care about the hardship, because to me, everything is a joy. So whatever you do, please look upon it as a calling and a passion, not as a job, not as something temporary. The third and the most important one, please help others rise. Greatness comes not from a position, but from helping build the future. All of us in positions of power have an obligation to pull others up. You know, as I stand here today, I look at my responsibility not as accepting an honor. I look upon it as accepting a challenge and a responsibility, an obligation to actually make it possible for the people who are younger to come up and achieve levels of greatness so they too can be on the stage sometime in the future.
I'm sure you meet with people all the time that say, Indra, I want to be you. You know, I want to be sitting where you're sitting in 20 years. What kind of advice do you give people who have these major aspirations?
I'm glad, and I will be even happier if more people came up to me and said, I want to be CEO, what does it take to get there? Because that means people have hopes and dreams and they feel the system will allow them to get there. So that's a good thing. Let me tell you what I typically tell them. Okay? First, don't start by saying, I want to be CEO. Because the minute you get obsessed about wanting to be the CEO, you forget what you have to do. Because you're more focused on the next job and the next job as opposed to doing the current job very, very well. So advice number 1, don't get fixated on your CEO aspiration. Focus on doing the current job you have so well that people say, nobody else can do that job as well as Dan's doing it. So I think it's critically important you focus on the current job. Second, whatever happens, have a hip pocket skill. People should look at you and say, you know, on this particular issue, the only person who can answer it or can contribute to it is Dan. Because if they know that you have a competence that nobody else has, you become more valuable. There's a great line which says, if you're valuable on the inside, you're more valuable on the outside. So inside the company, people have got to really value you for your capabilities. Third, courage. I think that's what's lacking the most today. If you really feel strongly about something, have the courage to defend what you're suggesting, because if we have more courageous people who stand up for their ideals and their values, I think companies and societies will become a better place. I don't think women can have it all. I just don't think so. We pretend we have it all. We pretend we can have it all. You know, my husband and I married for 34 years, and we have 2 daughters. And every day you have to make a decision on whether you are going to be a wife or a mother. In fact, many times during the day, you have to make those decisions. And you have to co-opt a lot of people to help you. We co-opted our families to help us. We plan our lives meticulously so we can be decent parents. But if you ask our daughters, I'm not sure they will say that I've been a good mom. I'm not sure. And I try all kinds of coping mechanisms. I mean, I'll tell you a story that happened when my daughter went to Catholic school, Convent of Sacred Heart. And every Wednesday morning, they have class coffee with mothers. Class coffee with mothers for a working woman, how is it going to work? How am I going to take off 9 o'clock on Wednesday mornings to go for a class coffee? So I miss most class coffees. My daughter would come home and she'll say, list of all the mothers that were there, and you were not their mom. First few times, I would die with guilt. But I developed coping mechanisms. I called the school and I said, give me a list of mothers who were not there. So when she came home in the evening, She'd say, you were not there, you were not there. I said, Mrs. Rag wasn't there, Mrs. So-and-so wasn't there. So I'm not the only bad mother. You have to cope because you die with guilt. You just die with guilt. My observation, David, is that the biological clock and the career clock are in total conflict with each other. Total, complete conflict. When you have to have kids, you have to build your career. Just as you're rising to middle management, your kids need you because they're teenagers, they need you for the teenage years. And that's the time your husband becomes a teenager too. So he needs you. Sorry. They need you too. So what do? And as you grow even more, your parents need you because they're aging. So we're screwed. I mean, we cannot have it all. But you know what? Coping mechanisms. Train people at work. Train your family to be your extended family. When I'm in PepsiCo, I travel a lot, and when my kids were tiny, especially my second one, we had strict rules on playing Nintendo. She'd call the office. She didn't care whether I was in China or Japan or India, wherever. She'd call the office. The receptionist would pick up the phone. Can I speak to my mommy? Everybody knows if somebody says, can I speak to mommy, it's my daughter. So she'd say, yes, Tara, what can I do for you? I want to play Nintendo. And the receptionist has a set of questions. Have you finished your homework, You see, I say this because that's what it takes. She goes through the questions and she says, okay, you can play Nintendo half an hour. But she leaves me a message. Tara called at 5. This is what the sequence of questions I went through. I've given her permission. So it's seamless parenting. But if you don't do that, I'm serious. If you don't develop mechanisms with your secretaries, with the extended office, with everybody around you, it cannot work. It can't. Motherhood, stay-at-home mothering was a full-time job. Being a CEO of a company is 3 full-time jobs rolled into one. How can you do justice to all? You can't. The person that hurts the most with this whole thing is your spouse. There's no question about it. Raj always says, you know what, your list is PepsiCo, 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 your 2 kids, our 2 kids, your mom, and then in the bottom of the list is me. There are 2 ways to look at it. You should be happy you're on the list. So don't complain. Just don't complain. He is on the list, very much on the list. But, So if I go back through my entire career, Dan, anywhere where things were too complex, it always came to me. And Indra, you simplified for us. You tell us how to navigate through this extremely complex problem. That's been my hip pocket skill then, it is today. So courage, communication. If you want to be a leader and you can't communicate effectively, forget it. In the digital world, people think texting and tweeting is plenty. It's not. You've got to be able to stand in front of employees and get them to go places they never thought they needed to get to. So you've got to have enormous communication capabilities. And you've got to have a compass. Your ethics are so important because you can be courageous, communicate beautifully, have a competence, but if you're downright unethical, nobody will follow you. So I tell this to people and say, guys, focus on these building blocks. And once you focus on these, the CEOship will come automatically in its own time. Don't be in a hurry to get there. Don't play the politics. Be aware of the politics in the company. Don't play the politics in the company. When my sister and I were kids and we were just a year apart, every night at dinner table, my mother would ask us to write a speech about what we would do if we were president or chief minister or prime minister. Every year, every day it would be a different world leader she'd ask us to play. At the end of dinner, we had to give the speech, and then she would decide who she was going to vote for. My paternal grandfather was a judge and a very, very strong personality. He had this way of telling us that if you're given a job, do it well or don't do it at all.